Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith in the New York City metropolitan area. Two things, you know what I'm about to say. Download the app, share it with your friends. We are an EWTN affiliate. You'll have access to all that content, all of our original programming, and share like I said, with your friends. There's a lot of great programming. Bishop Caggiano is on the station. Let's Be Frank is his show. And if you like what Joe and I do, we're all across social media: Rumble, X, Facebook, YouTube. Some of you might be seeing this on there. And again, like, subscribe, share, help us out. These conversations, you're going to understand in about 3 seconds why this one's very important, because if you listen to the front line with Joe and Joe, education, and particularly Catholic education, is something that's near and dear to our hearts. The ability of America and the Catholic Church to form our kids properly, in the faith, and educate them at the same time. And that's not as easy as you think. It's certainly not like when we were kids back in the day, a long time ago. So today we're very pleased and honored to be welcoming to the program Tom Carroll. And with Tom, we're going to be discussing the Catholic Talent Project. Tom's taken education very seriously. Joe and I do, and that's why Tom's here. Tom Carroll is the former superintendent of schools for the Archdiocese of Boston, and consultor to the USCCB Committee on Education, former president of the Invest in Education Foundation, and founder of the Brighter Choice Foundation. And we'll give Tom an opportunity to let all you out there, particularly you parents, know exactly where you can learn more about what he has going on. Tom Carroll, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, our brother.
Hey, delighted to be on with both of you.
Thank you, Tom. And like I said, this is going to be a great conversation, an informative conversation, and needless to say, an important one. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joe, and we'll get rocking.
Tom, we always begin the conversation with a prayer to Our Lady in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, for you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, Tom and I were talking before the show. We were kind of basically, telling him how much we're committed to Catholic education, because we are. Full disclosure, Joe and I grew up blue-collar guys. We both got good Catholic educations. That can't be had now. Catholic education has gotten to be very expensive. Joe's brother went to Yale, went just from Seton Hall Prep, from Newark. His sister has a PhD. Joe's the black sheep of the family. He just graduated from college. But Joe's, I might say Joe might be smarter than the two of them, but that's another conversation. Same with me. I have 2 master's degrees. My dad worked in a one-person barbershop, went to a Jesuit school. Very difficult right now. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for Catholic education. I have 5 kids, and they are in the Catholic education system. It's very expensive. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to get into what Tom accomplished. He was the superintendent of schools at the Archdiocese of Boston, as Joe Pasillo rightfully said. Tell us what you saw there. What you saw when you came in, some of your insights, because I'm interested. Boston's a huge, huge diocese. I'm sure you saw many things, and I'm sure you gained a lot of insight into what needs to be done as a result of that position.
Sure, thank you. No, I saw a bunch of things. Not everything I saw can be unseen, but Boston's one of the largest Catholic school systems in the country. Had about 32,000 kids across little less than 100 Catholic schools of all different levels, from preschool all the way through 12th grade. So when I took the job, I had a kind of an unconventional background for the job. First of all, I never went to Catholic school because I was not Catholic as a child. I converted a little over 20 years ago to Catholicism, and as part of my journey seeking the truth. And then second, I'd never been a teacher, never been a principal, never worked in a diocese. I joke, if I had worked for the Catholic Church, which is the world's oldest bureaucracy, I'm not sure I would have applied for the job. But anyway, be that as it may, so what I did have is I had a lot of experience running high-performing schools in Albany, New York, in a charter school context, ran a couple Catholic scholarship funds in New York briefly and longer in Albany. And I knew what it was supposed to look like. And I have all the fervor of a typical Catholic convert. So I know how important it is to save the souls of the children who are in the custody of Catholic schools. And I also, have an appreciation, having grown up on Long Island and know what sacrifices my parents made, that, Boston, like Long Island, like the whole New York metro area, and lots of places around the country, become really, really expensive places to live. And it's really tough to figure out how to send your kid to a private school, particularly a Catholic school, and also pay for college. And this is not just for people who are in grinding poverty, but it's true for great swaths of the middle class. So that's an issue. So when I went in there, I frankly, having never done it before, and a little surprised they gave me the job, I had open eyes. And the first thing, it seemed to me that a lot of the schools were being run as if they were private academies, not Catholic schools. And it were private academies that happened to have a religion class every morning. But the rest of the classes look pretty much like public schools. And I thought, if you're going to ask parents who are financially stressed to trust your children, with you, particularly from a faith perspective, we have to be delivering on that promise before anything else, which is people are trying, in some cases, trying to avoid the craziness in public schools. And not all public schools are crazy, but there are some that have gone stark raving mad on kind of some of the politically correct stuff. And we can get into that if you want. And Massachusetts, the whole state curriculum is driving stuff down to the preschool level that is offensive to a lot of parents. So people view Catholic schools many people view it as a haven from all of that. And they want to raise their kids in the faith that they grew up in, and they want to raise them in virtue to be upstanding citizens someday. And so we have to do a better job of that. So the first thing that struck me was the national statistic, but I found it to be very true in the Boston area, even though Boston's one of the most Catholic places in the country historically, is a lot of kids who are raised in Catholic families, by the time they hit age 13, 50% of them fall away from the faith. By the time they hit 18, basically graduation time, 86% fall away from the faith. There's no business in the world that can have an 86% failure rate and be a going concern. So my fear is the church is literally potentially a generation away from going from going the way of Europe. And trust me, I don't say that as a compliment. So, and I recently my wife and I were traveling in Europe earlier in the year, and particularly in Rome, we saw this, but, more than 900 churches, but there's nobody in them. And so very few exceptions to that. And so the churches in Europe largely have become places for, backdrops for fancy weddings and kind of tourists going by wanting a cute Instagram photo to post while they're on vacation. And so I don't think we'll always have pockets of faith in the country, and particularly in the homeschooling community. But this is a church that started out with 12 people, one of whom betrayed Jesus, and grew to over 1 billion. So we're supposed to be in the growth business. We're supposed to be evangelizing. And so the reason I found it after I left Boston, the Catholic Talent Project, is what I found is we first of all need school leaders that understand that they're in the business of running a Catholic school, not a school that happens to have some Catholics in it. And that affects everything you do, the design of the school, the textbooks that are used, but most importantly, it requires to do what Pope Paul the Sixth, or I should say St. Paul VI once said: modern man more willingly listens to witnesses than to teachers. And if he listens to teachers, it's because they're witnesses. So I think we have, as people running Catholic schools, an obligation to the parents who are trying to raise their kids in the faith, that we have to make sure that we have a witness to the Catholic faith in every single classroom. None of our kids should go into a Catholic school and find out that the teacher is, to use an old-fashioned phrase, shacking with their boyfriend or girlfriend at a hotel in Cabo on vacation while preaching something different in the religion class. So we need people that agree with church teaching, and we need people that are role models for the children. We also need a lot more men in elementary schools. boys don't become Catholic or aren't drawn to Catholic because of little old ladies. They're drawn because they see virile young men who are faithful, who are on their knees praying, who pray the rosary, and are willing to talk openly about their faith. And they're proud of being a joyful member of, Catholicism. And so one of the reasons there aren't anyone who has daughters is trying to marry them off to a good, solid Catholic guy. It's slim pickings out there right now. And so, and one of the reasons is we don't have enough role models in the Catholic school to reinforce often what's going on at home and sometimes what's not going on at home. There are a lot of families in which there's no man present in the home. People don't want to offend anybody by saying that, but it's true. And it could be a case where the father has never been known to the child or in divorce. And I know lots of people, including my family, who've been divorced, but they, often in case the woman will get custody, so the man won't necessarily be there. And many cases when they're divorced, people don't still go to church, but when they do, it's often the mother, not the father. And then a lot of people grow up in families that are not particularly faithful, so they've never seen anybody on their knees praying, man or woman. So I've spent a lot of time. So anyway, so I replaced over time 75% of the parochial school principals and hired a bunch of people who were committed to evangelization and were willing to hire the right kind of people. Then I went out around the country and started recruiting people at deeply Catholic colleges like Franciscan University, Thomas Aquinas, Ave Maria, Christendom College. And then I went to a lot of the big secular schools like Princeton, Yale, Harvard, MIT, Duke, University of Penn, and going through lay apostolates on those campuses, like Focus, for example, or Princeton, the Witherspoon Institute. I found the most Catholic kids on the campus and then convinced all of them, almost like a Catholic Peace Corps thing, that if you have missionary zeal and you want to be the first person to bring the word of God to the natives, you can go to Zimbabwe or you can come to Boston. It's pretty much the same job.
Nice.
It's just, we're now in, and I don't know if you've ever had Monsignor Shea on your show, but you definitely should. The president of the University of Marion, Bismarck. I always forget whether it's North Dakota or South Dakota. But he wrote a book that the title is roughly, and you get it on Amazon, is From Christendom to the Apostolic Age. So what he says is we grew up in Christendom where all the basic premises of the Catholic Church were widely held. For example, that there is such a thing as a boy and a girl, right? And then now we're in the apostolic age and we're in the land of non-belief, right? Or disbelief. And so we have to do much like the apostles. We have to go out and convince people who simply don't believe in what we believe in. And that's a different mindset. And it's also a less bureaucratic mindset. So the church is busy saving kind of the legacy institutions it's been running forever. But this is really like, we have to get out in the streets. We got to get out in the schools and we got to hire people hire people who know how to sell, right? And it's not a hard thing to sell. I always said to my kids when they're growing up about Catholicism, like you can mess up every day. And as long as you can try and make amends, you can start over the next day. There's nobody other than the Catholic Church who's going to give you that deal. So like, and it's a joyful religion. Like there's a lot of if you don't believe in the hereafter, it's got to be a pretty dreadful life to think like you're all just going to be eaten by worms and that's the end of your glorious life, right? So there's a lot of good stuff there to work with. And so I just think we have to do a better job. And so I found the most beautiful, I can talk more about it, but I'll stop talking, but I found the most spectacularly beautiful, faithful people on college campuses. So I'm one of those people who spend some time talking about shaking my head about this generation. But since I've been recruiting, and some of that's true, but I've found some unbelievably people. The most faithful people I've ever met in my life are 22 and 23 coming out of college these days. So I'll leave it at that for the moment. But so I think we have a huge problem of or a challenge. I'm an optimist, so I think these all can be solved. I think Catholic schools properly ordered, and they're not properly ordered for the most part now, can literally save the church. And if we can't get the current generation of kids in our schools to believe in God, let alone Catholicism, it's lights out. So, and we have an obligation to worry every day about the fate of their souls.
Tom Carroll's with us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, former superintendent of schools for the Archdiocese of Boston. We're talking about the Catholic talent project. You know, one thing, Tom, here at the show, Joe and I say all the time, we're not bishop bashers. We don't play that game like a lot of people do. That's not the same thing though as being respectfully critical. I don't think they're doing the job that they should. I don't think they're emphasizing enough. Like, you know, immigration to me is a political issue. Okay, education is a moral issue. Some people can argue with me about that, and there's a certain moral element to what your view is on our education, but on our immigration system. But that should not be your primary focus. Your primary focus should be just what you said. How do we evangelize the future if we're not forming the children properly? I fell away for 20 years. Thank God, only by his grace, I didn't drop dead in a state of mortal sin, and he saved me and got me back up on my feet, and my life changed from there. All right. And I went to Catholic high school. I went to Catholic college, and I'm not bashing Seton Hall Prep or Seton Hall University. Certainly not. I got a good, solid education, but I really wasn't formed properly. I really wasn't formed properly. All right. So did I read Shakespeare? Yeah. Did I take chemistry class at a high level? Yeah. But I wasn't formed properly, and that's why I fell away. And that to me is one of the biggest things. That's obviously what you were just talking about. Let's go here. Well, first of all, give us the broad strokes as far as the Catholic Talent Project. Like, what is your goal? What is it that you're doing?
Sure. So I'm trying to build out a talent pyramid for Catholic schools, and I'm pretty good at recruiting. And for whatever reason, most of the dioceses are not particularly good at recruiting. And so that just is what it is. So what I'm doing is the bottom of the pyramid is all the teachers. So we need to recruit thousands of teachers. I joke, I'm going to become the Full Employment Act for unemployed liberal arts majors. Like, I want to hire every philosophy and theology major out there that the parents are always worried was never going to have a job. And because I'm looking for people that have thought about the bigger questions and are intellectually curious. I'm looking for people with work ethic, because, you know, I want people that have had grubby jobs from like age 14, 15, 16 onward. If I'm interviewing somebody at 22 or 23 and they've never had a job, I'm like, I don't know what to do with you, right? So like, I'm not looking for spoiled rich kids. I'm looking for people that have some grit to them, because teaching can be really frustrating. But once I have that, then out of that group of thousands of teachers, I'm also going to figure out who has the talent to become a dean of students, a vice principal or assistant principal, a principal. And then out of those group of people, I'm going to figure out who has the talent to become a superintendent in a small market, middle market, or a large market, like the big 16, including Buffalo, Cleveland, Los Angeles, Miami, which are very difficult because it requires a very substantial kind of management skill set to be involved in a system that large. But I think it all starts with getting the people at the bottom in the classroom, start doing the missionary work, and then building it out every step along the way. And I'm also recruiting school counselors. We have in a lot of Catholic schools, I was shocked to find school counselors that aren't even Catholic. And so kids are meeting behind closed doors with school counselors. And in some cases, you know, people take the attitude, well, it's kind of like a visit to a psychiatrist, completely confidential. I made very clear to the principals, we're not in the business of keeping secrets from parents. That's not our franchise. Public schools may do that. We don't do that. So if a kid comes to you and there's an issue, you know, like, you're not like sending somebody off for hormone therapy behind the back of the parents. And we're not doing that anyway. We're not sending them there anyway. But so there's just all of these different angles. And so the idea is, I'm going to start with 2 dioceses, Boston, because I already know it, and I've already got this in motion, and San Francisco, because I've been talking with Archbishop Cordileone in San Francisco. And you know, San Francisco is obviously I'm not picking like the easiest places to go. San Francisco and Boston are 2 of the hardest places to do this work. And then every year I'm going to do 2 more dioceses. And then so at the end of 5 years, it'll be 10 and geographically distributed around the country. And the hope is it will show the 175 bishops who are running Catholic school systems how to do this. Because I can't do this for the entire country. So we have 1.6 million kids.
Tom, just to clarify, you know, because as they say in Italian, I'm a little gabadost. I'm a little hard headed. It takes a little while. You're setting up schools, or your program is something you're offering to the diocese for them to implement in already established Catholic schools?
Yeah. So what I'm doing is we could talk for weeks about all the things that I think need to be fixed. The one thing I'm focused on is just the talent piece. I'm going around recruiting people and cultivating their talent. And then I'm going to dioceses that are partnering with me. And then as they have vacancies, I'm not asking anyone to be fired, but there's a natural churn of all the positions throughout a Catholic school system in any diocese. So I'm basically saying anytime you have a lukewarm person leave, I'm going to give you a fire-breathing Catholic to go in and replace them.
Okay.
And then
All
just
right. I got
rinse and repeat, stack them into schools. And what I found is, and the teaching program I call the St. Thomas More Teaching Fellowship. And so as I recruit these fellows and I get them placed in schools, and I don't pay them, the Catholic schools pay them whatever they pay teachers, right? But I do the recruiting. So, and it's dramatically different kind of people than they normally would recruit out of a typical education school. And so, and then I train them up with a summer, I teach them how to teach, but I also am directing their spiritual formation on an ongoing basis as long as in their fellowship program. So I connect them with priests, young adult programs. I get them spiritual directors. I give them advice on where to go to adoration. If they're traditional Latin mass people, I tell them, how to hook up with a kind of this booming youth movement around the traditional Latin mass. And I do all of that kind of orchestrating, if you will. But I'm working in partnership with schools that are already being run. And I'm encouraging some individual superintendents to create more schools, in particular classical schools. But anyway, that's really their job, not my job. I just do the talent piece.
I'm
And
going
the
to hand
idea,
it over to
I
Joe.
can put a witness in every classroom, then we'll start saving lots and lots of souls.
No, absolutely. I'm going to hand it over to Joe. I would tell you this, just as an aside. Now my wife teaches here. I'm in Arizona. I got out of Dodge about 2.5 years ago, so I'm in Scottsdale. Okay, the charter school system here, it's called Great Hearts Academy. It's about
Yeah.
22 schools around the area. I've been saying, because my son goes there, all right, because my wife was teaching there, all right, or is teaching there.
Yeah.
So my son just started 9th grade. Okay, their education is what Catholic education used to be. I'm talking about now, not
Yeah.
necessarily in terms of formation, but there is something to be said for a charter school that's not specifically Catholic, that when you walk through the hallway, there's an image of Jesus and Mary on the wall.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the education itself is rigorous, extensive, thorough. All this subject. My son last year was taking the foundations of Latin. You know where I'm going, Tom. They're doing
they
it.
teach Great Hearts, which is founded by very faithful Christians, some Catholic, some not, but very deeply faithful people. They teach the Catholic intellectual tradition better than many Catholic schools do. Even though
That
they're
was
doing
where I
it.
was
Now
going.
they can teach, they can't preach, right? That's the difference. I also want to preach. Like so they have to stop at a certain point. There's certain things they're not allowed in a public school context, because they are public schools, to do. And I ran a charter school network in Albany, and I consulted with like a lot of religious liberty experts to figure out how far I could push it. And I just got continually frustrated. In fact, I recruited a guy as a principal who was working for a very good charter school in Boston. And there was a girl who got pregnant literally in 7th or 8th grade. And she was the principal and other people were encouraging her to go to Planned Parenthood to have an abortion. And this guy was a Georgetown graduate and Knights of Columbus member, a young guy, probably about 27 at the time, wanted to talk to her about adoption options and was not allowed to do it. So now I think the principal was wrong that the church state stuff, which I could argue about, there is no such thing. The doctrine church state thing actually isn't in the Constitution. But and I said to the reason I recruit him as a principal, I said, you're cooperating. This is not remote cooperation with evil. This is direct cooperation of evil. Like, you cannot work in an environment believing what you believe and allow, be part of kind of take a vow of silence against speaking the truth to that child in that moment. And then he switched to Catholic schools that September.
Yeah,
fabulous job.
We're gonna probably have to take a break in a couple of minutes. I would say that my wife.
I'm a big fan. I want to clarify. I'm a big fan of Great Hearts.
It's an awesome school. I mean, like you said, it's not a Catholic school. I wish that Catholic schools. Okay, now one thing, the cost. I'm going to say right out. I believe it's providential that God brought us to Arizona, because obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I couldn't send my son to Seton Hall Prep. if we were in New Jersey,
Right.
and I'd want to send him to Seton Hall Prep or St. Benedict's. I probably wouldn't be able to afford it. At least with the charter school, I know I'm going to form him as his father, and he'll go to the charter school, and he's going to get what I consider to be, a traditional Catholic education. That's about as good as I can do. We'll talk on the other side of the break, Tom. We'll talk. I know Joe wants to talk about the money and everything else. How maybe some things we could do, because it's crazy. It really is. I mean, I think Seton Hall University now is got to be $50,000 a year, and that's a low end. BC's
Yeah.
got to be what, 80 grand now. And some of these other schools, Notre Dame, who's going there? All right, it's you can't afford it. Tom, especially parents out there. So where does somebody go? And then we'll talk more on the other side of the break. Where does somebody go if they want to learn about what you're doing, or where in the country you're starting to take root, because maybe those people are in those parts of the country?
Yeah. So the website is hinted at behind me, which is CatholicTalentProject.org. And my contact information is on there. My wife thinks I'm crazy to hand out my cell number to thousands of people, but so you can reach me through the website. And then there's a form you can send in a question, but I also have my direct contact information, both my email and my cell phone number. But we're going to be initially in Boston and in San Francisco, and then we're looking at other major dioceses around the country for the following year to figure out what's the next best place to go after that. But I would ask everybody who's listening to you, any parent or grandparent ever worried about the faith of their children or grandchildren, to pray for the success of the Catholic Talent Project. Because if we don't solve this problem of 86% of the kids walking away from our faith, a world in which kids no longer believe in something larger themselves is going to be a very dicey place for a long time. So this is a battle for the ages. And I think it's all about, kind of as Chairman Mao understood, this is all about the children. We have to convince the children. And the nuns used to do it. We don't have nuns, but with as many. But as a result of that, we need to have lay people who are as on fire as the nuns were, maybe with a few less rulers.
Well, not for anything. We should take
yeah.
we should take a page out of the communist playbook, because, like you said, Joe and I mentioned the Khmer Rouge on this show all the time. How they X'd out the parents. They just totally move them out of the way, and the kids go to the indoctrination camps. Obviously, Mao did the same thing. Why the Catholic Church has been around for 2,000 years. Okay, it's the longest lasting institution in all of human history. Why? Because it was founded by Jesus Christ. That's why. How are we not fighting the enemy, especially over our children, more effectively than them when we have God on our side? I don't get it. Let's take a break. I know we could go on about that for quite some time. Tom Carroll joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Tom is the former superintendent of schools for the Archdiocese of Boston. He's the founder of the Catholic Talent Project, currently working with Boston and San Francisco. Certainly, if you're in those areas, look into it. But yeah, this is an important topic. So you're with us at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. Stick around. We have another great segment with Tom Carroll coming right up. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello are way in the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network with Tom Carroll. We're discussing the Catholic Talent Project and General Joe Rossinello. Where do you want to go?
Well, I just want to make a couple comments. I did a lot of listening on the first segment. Tom, you're our people. Honestly, you used a term that I'm going to steal from you. I'm going to tell you right now. Fire-breathing Catholic. That's what this show is. This is what we are. We're fire-breathing Catholics, and we need more of those. Love it. We could talk all day about the problems, but you're a realist. I could just tell you see the landscape. You're all about what's happening. I want to ask you something, though. You were in Boston, very similar to where you grew up in Long Island, where, grew up in North Jersey. A lot of parents, as you rightfully said, they don't send their kids to Catholic school to become saints. They don't. It's very, like I send my kids. I like the school. I try not to, say like the good is the enemy of the perfect, but it could be better. But at the end of the day, I see the parents, I don't think that necessarily a lot of them, they're nice people, but do they want their kid to hear about, no contraception? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
Sure.
Now you're in Boston.
Yeah.
And first, let me say this, and I have to give credit where credit's due. I give credit to Cardinal O'Malley for hiring you because you are a wave maker. See, Joe and I are wave makers too. You are a wave maker, and people in Boston, which is a very rich area, just like New Jersey is, just like New York, just like San Francisco, we don't make waves in rich places. That's just human nature. So credit to O'Malley. Got to give credit where credit's due. With that said, did people come at you?
Yeah,
I got to
so
ask you that because I'll be truthful with you. I can imagine it because I could just see you go into a school and you start making those waves. People are going to flip out. Tell me what you saw.
yeah, so there. Look, I always tell people, and I've recruited people to be superintendents in other areas, that if you don't have a sense of humor and you don't have thick skin, like keep moving on. Like this isn't the job for you. And so I also didn't plan on doing it for a lifetime. I think if you want to work for the church for 100 years, then you have to kind of be really careful about what you say and what you do, you know, because that's not the success for longevity, if you will. But I knew that there was, even though I was not appointed as an interim or as a change maker, I knew somebody had to come in and clean the place up. It just wasn't working right. We were having schools where, and it's not just the faith stuff, like schools were closing left and right all the time. We also had schools that didn't make sense anymore. Neighborhoods that, you know, used to be chock full of Irish and Italians and Germans and Poles now have a bunch of, you know, affluent tech workers that have cats and dogs instead of kids. So in some cases, there's schools that had to be closed because it didn't make any sense. That was just kind of basic economics. And my argument at the time to the Cardinal and others is like, we're wasting money on schools that we know aren't serving Catholics, or there is no Catholic market there at all. And meanwhile, there are Catholics who want to go to our schools that can't afford to, and we got to redirect the money to invest in where there's actually a market for the Catholic schools. So there was some adjustment when I came in, which, trust me, not everybody was happy with. And some of the people that are in there don't like my critique. But my argument is this is like AA. Like the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. And so you can't mobilize people to change if you're not willing to articulate what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. My goal isn't to run down the system. My goal is to save it. So in the 5 years I was there, it was the only time that enrollment was stable since 1965. It was just been like a rocket going in the wrong direction, just crashing and burning every year. So some of the, you know, kind of the stuff I did on the management side stabilized it to give us the time to start focusing on the faith issues. And you know, it was the largest intentional overhaul of school leadership, parochial school leadership of anywhere in the country out of 175 places. So that, you know, and that wasn't done. There were 7 or 8 people that were pushed out one way or the other, but the rest of it was taking advantage of attrition. I joke like prudence is an underrated virtue. Like there has to be some prudence when you do all of this stuff. And I recommended that to a lot of people and exercised it myself. But yeah, there were a lot of people who didn't like it. And I was asked to do a lot of things by different people, you know, that wanted their ideological issue of the day to be, you know, mandated on all the schools and stuff. And I wouldn't do it. And I had teachers who didn't like that I wouldn't allow them to talk about their political leanings with students. I thought our franchise is the transcendent, not grubby politics. And I didn't care whether somebody's Republican or Democrat or whatever. It's like, keep your views to yourself. You're there to teach people and you're there to inspire them. You're not there to get them to be your little minions for whatever your political cause of the day is. So when somebody says that, not everybody is happy with it, but I don't regret a single thing that I said. And I think the place I left it a much better place than I found it. And it's a lifetime of work because it has to be continued. There's constant churn among teachers and principals. So, you know, they have to keep doing it and doing it. I'm not claiming that I fixed every single problem, but I changed the direction of the schools and I made them more Catholic by all accounts. And I also made them more financially stable. Now, one thing I was not successful in is I made the argument that I think that what the Catholic Church is doing, we actually do a very good job with low-income families, deeply discounted tuition. We run a whole bunch of schools for the immigrant population. I think we need to have people that speak more different languages in terms of the faculty to address that issue. But I think we do a pretty good job. But I think the middle class is being not being as well served. All the scholarship programs that we have, they have them in the Archdiocese of New York as we do in Boston. They're all for the poorest of the poor. Now, I think we should have a preference for helping the poor. But I think if you talk to somebody in Kansas and tell them what somebody on Long Island makes, they don't think you need any scholarship help. But the reality is, if you're paying a mortgage on Long Island, given what housing costs, it's almost impossible. I don't know how old your kids are, but it's almost impossible to get a down payment together and to buy a house because there's no starter houses anymore because the entry price is so high. Everything costs more money. Car insurance costs more money. Food costs more money. Energy costs, the whole shebang, right? So, and then you have college tuition, which is now in some cases topping $80,000, right? So if you have a kid today, who's born today, what's college going to cost when they hit 18? $125,000, $150,000 a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Catholic Church is encouraging people to have kids, and I'm all for it too. But like, you have 5, 6, 7 kids at 150,000 a piece per year. It's completely unsustainable. So then we charge tuition, which is, I don't think at the elementary level is outrageous, but depending on how many kids you have is a lot of money. And you could be making on Long Island, and anybody listening to this outside of Long Island or the New York metro area will think I'm nuts, but you could be making, $100,000, $200,000, $250,000 a year and not living a large life at all on Long Island or in New York City or in Boston. And so my argument is we have to, subject to donors being willing to pay it, but the donor, there's a lot of people who graduated from Catholic schools and partly because of that have made bazillions of dollars. And I think we should keep doing all the stuff that we're doing for low income, but we need to set up middle-class scholarship funds to make this more affordable. The middle class is the backbone of the Catholic Church. And if somebody's a cop, a firefighter in the construction trades, and they're making, they're not making Walmart wages, but they're also not making investment banker wages either. And those families, we should be helping them. We shouldn't be saying like, and the problem is the teachers need to get paid more money, but you can't pay them more if the tuition is what it was 50 years ago, right? So the tuition has to be at a certain level, but that doesn't mean we can't do deep discounts. And I think we have to raise the level at which we're willing to offer help to people, because we're just pricing out a lot of salt of the earth people that deserve to be able to raise their children as Catholics with the help of a Catholic school. And I feel I've argued this till I'm blue in my face. I haven't gotten anybody to do anything about it yet. But I think the parents out there should just say, be very clear to reach out to, whether it's a bishop or a cardinal or an archbishop, and say your Catholic Scholarship Fund has to help us too. And there's lots of people on Long Island who are fabulously wealthy who went to Catholic schools 50 years ago or 40 years ago. And I think a very compelling case could be made that they need to help, just like their middle-class family was able to send them to a Catholic school. Now you have to help the next generation of middle-class families pull people up into the Catholic schools as well.
Joe, let me
Absolutely.
just say something to Tom, because you're right. You're, again, speaking my language, you're 100% right. I'm a father of 5. I have 5 young kids under 10. They all go to the Catholic school up the hill. And we sacrifice deeply, my wife and I, to do that. With that said, as a father, that's my job to protect my children. God gave me that job and I have to do it and I'll be judged upon it. Now, I'm going to throw this out. I'm going to make your sales pitch to the bishops and to the priests. They're fathers too, just like me, just different. They have a bigger responsibility than me. I always say the bishop has the crozier. I call it the stick. That's the stick to fight away the wolves. I could speak for me. I don't feel comfortable sending my kids to public school. I just don't. And I couldn't sleep if I did. So therefore, my wife and I, we sacrifice, deeply sacrifice, and we'll continue to do so. And trust God who will provide for us because we're doing our best. With that said, and this is where I know, because if you've spoken to the bishops' conference, they should put me in front of the bishops' conference. I would like to speak because you're a father.
Joe, you're gonna get arrested, Joe.
I don't
You're
care.
gonna get arrested.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because you're a
It
father.
would be a badge of honor.
But like that is your job. And they have money. Reallocate it. Children are a priority. I have things I like too, but my kids are my priority with what I spend my money on. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying you could do everything, but what I am saying is we're not a poor church. When you're talking about San Francisco, Boston, New York, Newark, New Jersey, these are wealthy, wealthy billion-dollar budgets. I'm not saying you could do everything, but what you're talking about is absolutely spot on, building the future. And if we don't care about kids, what the heck are we doing? And it's your job. You're a dad, just like I'm a dad. I'm interested in your comments because that's how I see it.
Yeah. And the thing is, if we don't turn this 86% number around, the 86% of the kids who lose their faith by 18, all the other programs the Catholic Church are running are for nothing, because there won't be any Catholics to serve anymore. Because people my age and up, we're eventually all going to be dead. And the pews are going to be empty if you don't keep educating generation after generation in the Catholic intellectual tradition, the Catholic moral teachings, the sacraments, and all the rest. Even the fact the global footprint of the Catholic Church is larger than any church on planet Earth in terms of service to the poor, the dispossessed, and the marginalized. The fact that kids get out of school and they don't know all of this stuff, like Catholic kids, a lot of times, because we're not as trendy as we used to be. Because I mean, we created the modern culture, but now we're considered countercultural. Catholic kids should not be looking down at their shoes when they say that they're Catholic. We created Western civilization. You look at art, music, architecture, philosophy, theology, science. Where would that be if it were not for the contributions of the Catholic Church? Where would the poor of the world be were it not for the contributions of the Catholic Church? So we have a lot to be, proud of, not in an exceedingly proud way, but it's about making sure that the kids believe and helping. Unlike, I joked before about Chairman Mao. The big difference is what I'm saying is we need to be working in partnership with the parents to help them fully understand the Catholic Church teachings better, and also to help them help us educate their children as well. And I don't think there's anything a bishop can do that's more important than saving the next generation of Catholics.
Tom Carroll's joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, and we are discussing Catholic education. His project is the Catholic Talent Project. Tom is the former superintendent of schools for the Archdiocese of Boston. It's one thing, it's funny, Tom, I've known a bunch of atheists in my life. A dear friend of mine who I met here in Phoenix is a lapsed Catholic and atheist. So I'm always careful. I'm respectful. I think we're a lot more respectful to atheists than they are to us. But having said that, I always make the point, like when you just mentioned science, education, it's like Catholic Church is against education, Catholic Church is against science. And yeah, who founded the scientific method and who founded the university system? And they, quite frankly, in fairness, in all charity, they don't know the answer to that, and we do know the answer to that. The Catholic Church did. But I want to get on something I think is important to discuss and bring into this conversation. I'm going to try to frame this a certain way. I think you'll know where I'm going. My father fell away from the church. He was not practicing, okay? I don't think he hated the church, but he just didn't practice, okay? My mother did. But when my father sent us to Seton Hall Prep, my father didn't question the Catholic education. He didn't question having to take morality class and ethics class and Catholic teaching and social, all of it, okay? His attitude was, I'm sending you there so you'll get the Catholic education, regardless of his own personal issues with the church, okay? That was my father's view. Now, here's the thing, and Joe and I try to have a balance here. We look at the public schools where the secular, atheistic, Marxist public school system says the parents have no say. Okay. And we find that objectionable. We think parents should absolutely, especially given what you mentioned earlier, Tom, or Joe mentioned also about not being able to sleep at night if you're sending your kid to a public school. But here's where I have an issue, and I want you to help me out with. But if I was to send my son, let's say he was in the Catholic school and it was a good Catholic school, regardless of what I think on contraception, this and that, if I'm sending him to a Catholic school and that Catholic school is teaching Catholic teaching all across the board, I should back off. Now, I know that sounds almost like I'm contradicting myself, but I think you might know where I'm coming from because
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
yeah, then let me throw that to you because, like I said, I want parents to go and challenge school boards and tell them, "What are you doing teaching my kid about rainbow flags and things like that?" But
Right.
when it comes to Catholic school, maybe I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I want the parents to back off if the Catholic school is doing its job informing the kids properly. I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah. If I do an analogy, it's like walking into a Tesla dealership and asking for a refrigerator, right? They do what they do, right? We do what we do. So my wife taught in a Catholic school, and she schooled actually my kids in all boys Catholic school outside of Albany. That and she taught there after they were long gone. But people in other faiths would come in, not even Christianity, but other faiths completely, right? And they would come in and want like to change what the Catholic Church, the Catholic school was teaching. And the name of the school had saint in front of it. There was no mystery. It was a Catholic school, right? And my wife was like, and she was teaching preschool. So she got a lot of people when they were first entering the school. And she wasn't surprised, but she was just amazed by the whole thing. And she would just calmly say to the parents, like, well, you do know this is a Catholic school, right? So it was a Catholic school before you walked in. It's going to be a Catholic school after you walk out. So this is what we teach if you're comfortable with it. We respect all the faiths and we respect that you may want something different for your child, but this is what we do here. And so I think a lot of people, including in Boston, the principals, the former principals, they were too timid. They were so scared that they wouldn't have enough people enrolled that they would try to be everything to everybody. And that means you're nothing to everyone. So I think once you lose the franchise of being a Catholic school, then you are just a secular private academy. That's, if you're going to sell basically a secular education, then why would somebody pay tuition? You can get that for free in a charter school or in a district school, right? So the only thing we do that they can't do is save souls and preach the gospel, right? So if you give that up, then you're like, so you're going to add a STEM program or a new computer lab and give kids more computers. I'm not opposed to any of that stuff. Don't get me wrong, but that's not what, like, we're going to outbid the public school system with all their tax money. We're going to buy more in technology than the public schools. That's not what it's all about. So I think we need to have the confidence of our faith that what we're selling is actually the truth with a capital T. We're not embarrassed to say it. We're not embarrassed or sheepish about being Catholic. And we need to I did this video, which I posted on the website, a Catholic Talent Project, but I did it previously. And I got a lot of flack for it, but it was titled "Putting the Catholic Back in Catholic School." And a lot of people took offense to it. But anyway, if you Google my name and the word edify, it's an offshoot of Catholic Vote, the video will come up and it's titled "Putting the Catholic Back in Catholic School." Or you can go to our website and then there's a list of kind of some of my former media appearances. And that video is, I think, like the third one down there. But my argument is that we need to go back to saying proudly that we're Catholic, encouraging kids to be proud to be Catholic, and bring the Catholic intellectual tradition back to the classroom. And ironically, as Great Hearts as a public charter school does, like that should be embedded in every single academic discipline. And then we have to start wondering, why should we use the same textbooks as the public schools? I said to a priest, who's a pretty conservative priest, I'm going like, would you, if you set up a curriculum committee, would you appoint, and I don't mean this to be political, but you'll know what I mean about the culture of California, but would you pick Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, and Adam Schiff to be the head of the religious curriculum in your Catholic school? So you're picking textbooks, mass market textbooks, have to get approved by California because what's called a textbook adoption state. So if they don't approve it, you can't sell it. It's the biggest textbook market in the entire country. So as a result, anything that offends the political class of California, like that dominates all these mass market textbooks. So if you know that, you have to look at the textbooks very carefully that you allow to be used in a Catholic school. And they shouldn't necessarily, and in some subjects, maybe like math, it doesn't matter, but there are other subjects, particularly history, where it matters a lot. And sometimes it's not necessarily, sometimes it's Catholic bias, but sometimes it's just, they're trying to take all the controversy out of a textbook. Well, now every moral teaching in the Catholic Church is considered controversial. You can't even say God created man and woman, right? So, I mean, if that's controversial, then So
that'll get you canceled, Tom.
right. So I mean, you know what I mean? So I think we have to be really careful about every single thing that we do within a Catholic. I had a case of I was complaining to a principal that she was a micromanager. And then her retort was, if I was a micromanager, we would have had a psychic at the school fair yesterday. I go, like, what are you talking about? And she was the new principal. A teacher who was there before and was still there when she took over as principal thought it would be fun to have a psychic at the school fair. And so you can't have a psychic tomorrow, right? And she goes, well, and the teacher honestly said, and this has to do with, we need to do catechizing adults, right? She goes, like, why? She was completely befuddled.
I'm
And she
glad
goes,
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually what I was going to
a
talk
lot of
about.
it's accidental. I mean, like a lot of people are poorly catechized. They don't know that they're doing things that in that case were heretical. But so I'm not blaming the teacher, but that's why you need strong Catholic leadership.
Yeah, Joe, just to give you a heads up, we got time for maybe one more topic. We got about 5 minutes left. Joe, what do you want
No,
to
just
talk to Tom
very
about?
briefly on what you just said, because I think you said this on the other side of the break. I think it was a very shrewd decision to hire people, young people, because they're catechized better. Many people, they just don't know the faith. Like, they don't know it, and they're good intentioned. But ultimately, did you ever read the catechism? Do you believe what's in it? Like, a lot of Catholics, like my age, they don't. They don't even know what the church teaches or why. And those young people you're hiring, they do, which is a sign of hope. Comment on that a little bit more, because ultimately, I think a lot of people who are in place, they don't even know what the church teaches or why it teaches it.
Yeah. So I put it this way. So I say my job is to make sure that people in the church older than me don't destroy the church before people younger than me save it. There's this huge generational shift occurring. All the priests, and I converted before I went to Boston, but my faith is like 5, 10 times what it was. Just from Boston's a great place to deepen your faith. All the priests that were inspired by JP2 and Benedict, and now the kids in the seminary make me look like Chairman Mao, right? They are so unbelievably on fire. In Boston, roughly 80% of the seminarians were homeschooled. So that tells you something about where they're coming from in terms of how deep their faith is and how seriously their families took it, right? So you have this amazing set of clergy coming and religious sisters, right? Because now what's happened is the left basically had common cause with the church in the 60s on a lot of social justice issues, right? But now the left has gone, or they call progressive, has gone so off the deep end that you can't be pro-life and be a progressive anymore in the views of the enforcers of all of this stuff. And so it means that a person of faith, it's very difficult for somebody who actually believes in, like somebody's the kind of person who would go into a seminary, can't believe what they're demanding they believe and still be a priest because they're in contradiction, right? So as a result, there's a shift occurring in who the clergy members are and who the religious sisters are. That's part one. Part two is that the lay, if you're a young person and you declare yourself, you're not sure what you want to do, right? If you're wishy-washy, you're just a nun, N-O-N-E. You don't declare for any religion. Because if you say you're a Catholic, you'll be in so many fights on your college campus, your high school. It's almost dizzying, right? Particularly in a public school context, right? But sometimes even in a Catholic school. So what it means is the people who embrace the faith are the people who are really brave and really mean it and really understand it. And they believe it with all of their heart and their soul. And so you have this paradox of you have unbelievable percentages of kids, 86%, walking away by the time they're 18. But the ones who believe, oh my gosh, I have met people 23 and 24 coming out of college that are more faithful than any, I mean, they're adults, but any like older person that I've encountered in my entire life. Their faith is spectacularly beautiful. One person, we have them write an essay on their faith, just quickly. The opening line of the essay, a guy recruited out of Thomas Aquinas College was, "One cannot know me without knowing the faith that I profess." Then he goes down a little more and then he says, "I honestly can say that the happiest days of my life have been before the Blessed Sacrament." Those are the kind, and he spent like a month on a retreat with a priest in the deserts of New Mexico as part of a religious experience. But those are the kind of people that the hostility of the broader culture, the faith of these young people are being forged by the opposition of the broader culture. And it's
You
creating
just made like a
spectacular
guy in
faith.
Brooklyn listening to this. His eyes just twitched by that statement you just made. Like some yuppie in Brooklyn heard that statement, was like, "Oh my God, that's what's coming. Yes, that's what's coming. I love it."
No,
So,
seriously.
and I just urge parents, like if your child becomes like a parent that's not quite there yet, comes alive with the faith like that, just give them the space to go with it and don't clamp it down, because it's the most beautiful gift that they've ever received from the Holy Spirit, and nobody should stand in the way of it.
Tom Carroll, we have to leave it there. We're on radio, so we have time limits, but what a great conversation, Tom. Very important conversation. We want to encourage everyone to go and learn more about what Tom's doing. The CatholicTalentProject.org, CatholicTalentProject.org. Correct, Tom? That's the
That's
website.
correct. And anybody out there who's been worried about the faith of their children, grandchildren, please pray for the Catholic Talent Project, and that will be successful.
Well, you're going to be in our prayers. Absolutely. Tom Carroll, thank you so much for coming on the front line with Joe and having this important conversation. Needless to say, you are welcome back here anytime, our brother. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless both of you.
God bless you. And thank you all out there for joining us at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Download the app, share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content. If you like this conversation and you're watching it on social media, X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Keep in mind, Joe and I go live on social media where we really get in trouble. Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. So join us there. And thanks once again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.